Anyway, but I came to talk about the new book. And I guess it's good news and I guess it's bad news. But this morning they all sold out. They're all totally gone. And I don't. And Barnes and Noble is too. So I guess that's kind of good news if it's all sold out. But you want to see your book in the stores, but still. So last year I came out with a book called Life-Driven Purpose. And some of you know what that means. That's Rick Warren, the purpose-driven life guy. I think the top-down model of purpose-driven life is wrong, and I flipped it upside down, saying there is no purpose of life, which is good, but there's purpose in life. As long as there are problems to solve, and the Elizabeth Cady Stantons and the Margaret Sangers and the people who are trying to solve real problems, there's purpose within our lives, bottom up. Here in a country that flipped a constitution upside down, we don't have a constitution that's under some monarch or sovereign or king or lord or whatever. We flipped it upside down, and we the people. It's a bottom-up kind of a country. We the people run this country. And but as I was working on that, Richard Dawkins emailed me in 2014, and I think you all know Richard Dawkins, right? Everybody knows. Okay, evolutionary biologist. He wrote The God Delusion, and he wrote the foreword to my previous book, Godless. Where he said, and I still don't know if this is a compliment or not, but he said, Dan Barker is the most eloquent witness of internal delusion that I know. Yeah, because I believed it, and I really was deluded. It was like, but he emailed me in April of that year, 2014, and said that the God Delusion, there's one sentence in the God Delusion that he's getting criticized really heavily for, but all over the place. And if you read The God Delusion, it's not like the critics say. Most of you probably read it, right? The critics say it's strident and angry and contentious and angry, but if you read it, it's not. It's passionate, and it's got some strong argument, but it's not like an angry thing, except for one sentence, and even Richard Dawkins admits, this one sentence in The God Delusion has raised some hackles. So do you have your copies? Turn with me to chapter 2, verse 1 of the... You didn't bring it with you? The first sentence of chapter 2 says, and I'm trying to set this to music, and it's not quite working yet, but should I try it out on you first? It needs a verse, and it needs something more to it, but the basic song is kind of like this. The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Jealous and proud of it, petty, unjust, and unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic racist, infanticidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully. Well, that's the sentence. So that's the sentence, and then there's these 19 nasty adjectives in the sentence. And so he was working on a PowerPoint, well, not PowerPoint, he's a Mac, he uses Keynote, and so do I. So we didn't have to do any conversion. I think PowerPoint and Keynote are kind of like Catholics and Protestants. It's like you're in one camp or the other. But so he was working on a Keynote slide that he wanted to put the body of the sentence, the God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction, as the body of a spider, and then there's 19 spider legs going around it. So you could click on ethnic cleanser, and then up pops a verse. You shall drive out all the inhabitants from the land, for I have given you the land to possess, right? Plus a bunch of more verses, right? So it was kind of cool to go through the Old Testament again after all these years. I thought I was done with it. Are you still reading the Old Testament, John? No? And whoever does. I think people treat the Bible like, when you install a new app on your device, and there's the terms and conditions. You go down to the bottom, you just hit accept, right? Did you ever read it? And I think the Bible's that way. People go, oh, the Bible is God's Word. Hit accept, all right. And you don't actually know what's in it. So we were going through these lists and kind of emailing back and forth. And eventually, it came out to be about 1,500 passages from the Bible, documenting all 19 of those verses. And so, it was on July the 4th. Richard sent an email and he said, you know what? This is a lot of stuff. This would make a good book. Pun intended. Get it? Good book. The good book. And he said, you know, you could have a chapter for each one of those adjectives. You know, jealous and vindictive and misogynistic and Annie Laurie was there when I read the email, and she said, "Hell yes!" And I use Annie Laurie a lot for the research on the misogyny chapter. It's horrible. And right now, Buzz Kemper and I are reading the book. We're making an audiobook out of it. And we're on page 165. And we went through misogyny and some of the stuff that I didn't know was in the Bible. And when we got through doing, he's doing the voice of God. I'm reading the narrative. And then when the verse comes up, Buzz Kemper, and then the Lord saith, thou shalt kill all the little children. You know, that horrible. Buzz Kemper is like a famous voice talent, and he's in Madison, Wisconsin. And he worked with Garrison Keillor for a long time, so he's like a big name. And he's enjoying this. He's giving us a cut rate because he wants to be the voice of God. And so, anyway, we can hardly look in each other's eyes after we read some of these. But we leave the studio like, okay. Because God says what he's going to do to the issue between the woman's legs, that she will eat the flesh of her babies. And I mean, this is horrible stuff. So anyway, so I started working on it, and Richard actually was making comments, and he was trying to tone it down a bit. He was suggesting maybe you shouldn't go, maybe you shouldn't, and in fact he was even suggesting that there would be some examples that I should cut from the book, because we don't want to be guilty of overreaching, you know what I mean? We want it to be just get the basic there. Even then there was more than 1,500 verses. And so we got through those 19, but as I was working on it, I discovered that he missed some adjectives. So you'll see the book. I don't have any here, but part 1 of the book is called Dawkins Was Right, and it has those 19 chapters. And you can look up infanticidal and see all that. You can look up misogynistic or bully. Bully's a good one. What was the point of the first 9 plagues of Egypt, right? If God knew the 10th plague was going to do the trick, then why, you know? And why 10? And God even says in the Bible, and Pharaoh changed his mind after the 6th plague, and Pharaoh said, "Okay, enough, let the people go." And God said, "No, I'm not done. I got more tricks to show you." He basically said that to show you my power, so that you will know. So he hardened Pharaoh's heart because he wanted to do the 7th plague. And then Pharaoh said, "Okay, let him go." And God said, "Nope, I got 10 whole fingers here. I got to show you my whole." So anyway, so I found 8 more characteristics that maybe he didn't overlook. Maybe he thought 19 was enough. Okay, but so I have part 2 of the book. Part 1 says Dawkins was right. Part 2 says Dawkins was too kind. And I have pyromaniacal. And I was surprised, and maybe you would be as surprised as I, how much flame throwing and scorching and burning there is through the Old Testament. Almost every page is like heat, glowing with the heat of flames and scorching, and not just the cities and the people and the animals and the earth and all of that, angry, merciless, aborticidal. There are a few, there's not a lot, but there's a few places where God actually says that he will rip open the pregnant women, and if you think about it, even the flood was feticidal at least, because there had to be pregnant women who died during that time. Cannibalistic is another one, where you shall eat the flesh. In fact, there are some places in the Bible where you do find true gender equality. For example, you shall eat the flesh of your sons, and you shall eat the flesh of your daughters. So you'll find egalitarian verses in the Bible. Other than that, you're better off being born a male for all sorts of reasons. Bacticidal, you know what that word is? Bacticide is the killing of cows, like we get vaccine. And I had to use that word because I can't find a word for the general killing of animals. So bacticidal is standing in for the general killing of all animals. animal rights and respect back then were, they're not so great today even, but back then it was just horrible. All the non-human animals were just these sacrifices that were being, what else did I miss? Curse hurling, the covenant, God's covenant with His people. When you go to a marriage and you have a marriage vows, well, God's covenant with His people included here, you will be my people and you will love me and obey me. But if you don't, then there's this long list of curses. I mean, horrible stuff. It'd be like going to a modern wedding where the man says, yes, do you love her? Yes, I promise I do. I love you until death do us part. And if you ever look at another man, I'm going to poke your eyes out with a hot poker, and I'm going to spread cow poop on your face, and and I'm not making this up. Cow poop on the face is in the Bible. Really. What would you think of a guy who said, I love you and you better love me, but it's like a jealous, controlling husband. He really is this horribly jealous, sort of alpha male kind of character. And I refer a little bit to Hector Garcia's new book called Alpha God, where he thinks a lot of these gods are just the primate males, the big ape who was able to get the food and control the territory and control the females, and then all the other secondary bait, the bee ones, they have to kind of, please, can I get something from you? Please, can I share? And this big alpha god. Well, that's kind of what the God of the Old Testament is, and it seems to be an extension of the sexually insecure authors of the book themselves, who wanted to control women, who wanted to be, they're jealous and they wanted to have their property. And women basically were property in the Bible. If you look at it, they were just basically property, like the cows and the jewelry and the children. Children were property. So, and then the last one is slave monger, because Richard forgot about slave mongering. Slave mongering is a big deal in the Bible. And then, of course, there's a 28th chapter, because what are Christians going to say? We're going after the Old Testament. What are Christians going to say?
The New Testament.
Yeah, or at least they're going to say we shouldn't judge the whole Bible by the Old Testament alone. And you know what? They're right.